Hi, it's Splinterverse. In this video, we're going to be reviewing two books from Infinium Game Studio focused on solo role-playing. They're part of what's called the FlexTales system, and this first book we're going to look at is called the FlexTales Solo Adventuring Toolkit, with rules and resources for solo RPG play, written by J. Evans Payne, and as you can see here on the cover, it's compatible with Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, OSR, Pathfinder, both versions, as well as Dungeon Crawl Classics, and pretty much any fantasy role-playing game that you can think of, this would probably work for. And before I get into detail on this book, let me tell you, I'm not getting paid for this review. I did receive free copies of the book, and if you click the link in the video description to purchase this book or the other one we're going to talk about today, I do get a very small percentage affiliate fee, which is helpful for the channel. So solo role-playing is a lot of fun. A lot of people in the pandemic have started playing solo just to have time to enjoy the hobby that they like because they can't maybe get together with other people, and so it's really become more popular. And what's really nice about this system is it gives you all the tools you need to take existing adventures you own and make them a solo adventure, or to create brand new on-the-spot adventures. And because it's so detailed and complex, you can come up with almost anything with this. It covers all the bases. It's got over 580 pages in this first book that we're going to look at. So it's really meant to be a one-stop shop to give you all the things you need to get started, get soloing, and not have to worry about purchasing a bunch of other things or having to completely rely on 20 books or a website or all these other things. You can just use this book to get yourself started, which I really appreciate. Sometimes these kind of books, they require a bunch of other stuff, so it's nice that this one is a one-stop shop. So the full table of contents, because the book is so big, takes about 7 pages, but thankfully the publisher has provided a condensed table of contents as well, so you can see all of the stuff that's in this book. And at over 580 pages, we could do a week's worth of videos on this and really not even cover everything. So we're only going to dive into a few pieces of this book so I can show you the detail. It is very table intensive, very crunchy, so hopefully you like those things. I mean, if you're playing solo, you do need to be able to be comfortable with tables and randomness and things like that, because you're basically taking the place of a GM and the player, and maybe, depending on how you set it up, multiple players. So you can see they've got the intro talking about, conventions, usability, etc. Then they have a quick start to help you get started. Then all sorts of discussions about solo play, the various approaches, including you can play one player, one character, or one player, multiple characters. And I really appreciate that they went into that, because that is a distinction for some people. Some people don't want to just play as a single character. They want to play as a whole party. So they give you how to do that here. And then they even go into other approaches like playing as a whole army or playing other ways in here, which is nice. And then they've got the universal play techniques, variants for traditional play, because some of the things in this book you can actually use in a multiplayer setting as a DM, or just to supplement some of the things that you're up to. And then it talks about general PC roles and how to do the one-player multi-character composition and designing your character for solo play. Then you've got encounters, all the different types of quests, how to handicap characters if you need to, how to adjust the rules if you need to, everything from skills, feats, you name it, it's in here. Spellcasting, combat, how to adjust the rules. And then you've got your rewards, all the different types of possible rewards, penalties, and then a wonderful section of generators that I find super useful that you can use even outside of this. Everything from what type of settlement is this? Is it a hamlet, or is it a bustling city? To all kinds of things like likelihood to succeed. There's like a random table for that. So lots of generator tables that I could see used in, traditional play as well. Then there's some map templates, and then the Flex AI system, which is how the Infinium covers monsters and how they behave, and NPCs and how they behave, because there is a separate book for that. We're going to be looking at one of the monster books as well. So that's really cool that they have this way of making the monsters and other characters feel like they're more being run by a person as opposed to you running everything. And then there's some additional appendices and indexes, including all the tables being indexed as well. And then there are bookmarks in the PDF, so you can jump around using those, which I appreciate. So here's part of that intro we talked about, where they go into when to use the book, what is this book, etc. So I want to read parts of this to help you get a better understanding of what this is. So it's a standalone tool used for generating and running a solo adventuring campaign. It's also inspiration for running traditional tabletop games. And it's a dynamic content generation tool to quickly create endless quests, dungeons, rewards, threats, and other adventure content with zero prep, and in either solo or traditional game environment. And it's a companion to FlexTale and Counter Generator books. So again, you don't have to have all these books to make it work. There are sample monsters and things in this 580-page book. So even if you just got this one, I think you'd have everything you need to get going and play. But if you like it, I would definitely consider some of the other FlexTale books, because then you can just enhance your experience. So this assumes that you're kind of familiar with role-playing, that you haven't, this isn't your first experience with role-playing. Very important point here. You're going to be basically playing the role of several typical roles at the table, so you need to have a little bit of familiarity, so that's good. It says that on its own, the Flex Tool Adventuring or Solo Adventuring Toolkit is designed to be fully used on its own without any other IGS or FlexTale products, and it has enough of an introduction to frame it as a tool to single-handedly drive, enable solo play. So again, just reinforcing that this has everything you need, all kinds of additional stuff that you can read if you get the book, or you pause the screen, you want to read the rest of the intro here. But I like that they're being very open and upfront about expectations. I think that's important, and I wanted to cover that here too. So now let's just look at one of the tables, and there's so many in this book. If you like tables like I do, there are just so many. You're going to feel like it's just you won the lottery of tables. So first thing I want you to notice is how they have this A, B, C, D column here. And this is true of pretty much all the tables in the book. If you want an ordinary level of challenge, so there's nothing out of the ordinary going on, then you would use column A. So you would roll your 1d20, and you can see every line is basically a single number. But then if you want to represent a different type of challenge, so if the party and its allies are of advanced abilities, and they need an additional challenge, then you would use the B column. So you can see some of the rows get skipped here. And then if you want to have a representation of a party that's like reduced abilities, maybe they're under stress, or they have some sort of penalties on them, then you would use this column C and skip over the first one, skip over row 12 here, and go forth. And then context D is if you want even more advanced level of difficulty regardless of the party's abilities, etc., then you would use this one, and that skips a lot of them. So this table is about maps, so difficulty levels with maps may not be the best example of how you would need difficulties, but I just kind of wanted to use this one because I thought it showed a good example of the context. But even beyond that, you can see here that this table provides what different types of map pieces you would have. So you might have a straight hall here, or a straight chamber, an L, 𝙎𝙬𝙗𝙪, 𝙎𝙪𝙗𝙀, dead end, obstacle, you name it. Roll again with treasure, roll again with threat, and then of course there are corresponding tables for these things. We're not going to show all the tables, but you can see how you could just put together, okay, you start with maybe you roll a 2, you get the straight haul, then you roll again and you get a 4-way chamber, so that connects to that, and then you roll again and to determine where this part of the 4-way chamber goes, and you get dead end, and so it's a dead end, and before you know it, you've got a whole dungeon mapped out. And you can do it as you go too, as you're rolling through, because they do talk about when do you find out information. So we're going to go over some things that cover that in a second. So just wanted to show another quick start kind of hallway encounter situation. Again, you see all those different columns here. So if you're doing advanced, like advanced level of difficulty, context D, you have out of 20, only 8 opportunities to end up with no encounter. Whereas with a typical one, you have 14. So that's a large number of possibilities of no encounter. And then there's traps, obstacles, secrets, combat encounters, rolling twice to get more than one of these things. And so you can see when they're reduced, the roll twice isn't even a factor. So I love this concept of having these 4 different columns, and then you just use your D20 and you can resolve it for whatever situation you want. And of course, if you're using this in a solo situation, it's up to you to determine, is this an additional challenge situation? Is this a reduced challenge situation? And hopefully you'll be fair with yourself and not cheat, but it's up to you. So then it talks here about, what do you know? What do you know as you're playing the game? So I wanted to read a little bit of this. It says, the art of solo self-delusion. There's no way around it. You're going to know more than you should. Solo play demands that you play, at least in part, the role of the GM. This book can take some of that burden on, but for at least some part of your solo adventuring, you will have to know more than a traditional player in your shoes would have the right, or certainly the ability to comprehend. So as we looked at in the previous pages, right, you can randomly generate everything as you go with this book, so then maybe you don't know things because it's randomly happening before your very eyes. But as I said earlier, if you want to take an existing adventure, Wild Beyond the Witchlight or whatever adventure, and use this to help you get through it as a solo player, then you are going to know some things, because you're going to have to read that book and kind of see what the DM is supposed to see, right? So things like knowing that the shopkeeper you meet in a small village is actually a necromancer, that the big bad ogre in the cave is merely misunderstood and can be charmed if you persuade it correctly, that the east wall is illusory and reveals a hidden treasure cache. These are things that are impossible to play toward and yet not know as a single human performing all the roles, right? So then the rest of this section where I'm reading this from goes through ways to address this. So obfuscation can be thought of as the art of hiding something. Simply put, it's not a surprise or secret if you already know about it. So the best way to keep the secret content secret is to not tell yourself. This is tricky to pull off, but the easiest way to do it confidently is using an approach called late determination. And you can also use an approach called intentional estrays. So you see how detailed this book is, because the author's really thinking through and saying, okay, what are the things that are going to come up, and what are the different theories and ways of going about this? So the late determination is one method, and another is intentional estray. So late determination says secret doors, plot twists, and other secret content can remain hidden simply by not determining its existence until the last feasible moment. This just-in-time decision-making adds an element of surprise and dynamicness to any game, and has been a feature in many published IGS adventure products already. So IGS being Infinium Game Studios. So they have adventures that you can use, right? Tables, tools, and other resources in this book explore this concept and its mechanical execution in more detail, but it's a straightforward concept fundamentally. Do not determine things that could be secret in advance. Roles to decide whether things are revealed should only occur at the latest possible moment. This approach prevents the solo player from taking actions based on unintentional knowledge. For example, if you're reading a published adventure and reading the GM's map, you will notice that there's a secret door in room number 29. During your solo adventuring, you'll be tempted to search that room for secret doors because you already know there's value in performing that search. Late determination really only applies to dynamically generated adventure content created using FlexTale tools and tables. It is exceedingly difficult to employ this approach using an existing published traditional adventure module, for example. True, because late determination means not even deciding what's there until you get there if you can, right? You can't really do that with a published adventure because it's already been decided. So, but they want you to know that that's an option. So with a published adventure, you might use something called an intentional astray. When you are not using late determination and generating your own dynamic adventure content, you will unavoidably be in possession of knowledge that an equivalent group of traditional PCs would not have. Secret doors, plot twists, NPC motivations and backstories, and the entire plot. You'll know it all having read through the adventure you're playing, though now with a solo focus. So like I said, if you read Wild Beyond the Witchlight or Curse of Strahd or whatever the adventure is, you kind of know what's coming, and you got to kind of hide that from your mind. So one way of still keeping some realism is to introduce intentional astrays into your solo adventuring. As with nearly all rules in this book, you can include this concept in combination with any other set of solo play rules you choose to employ. An intentional astray is a purposely fruitless endeavor. It doesn't result in a reward or the revelation of a secret. It is a time sink and usually involves an element of risk besides. It's leading you astray from the main plot or your current focus of adventuring, and it's intentional because you're choosing to allow for the possibility of the astray as a means of representing the very real normal likelihood that most searches for secrets do not bear fruit. So to just kind of summarize what this means, it's saying that yes, okay, you know you're going to need to search room 29. So as a consequence for knowing that you're going to need to search room 29, you're going to have other times where you intentionally waste time. And it's not like you have to sit there and wait through it. The book shows you how to use it. So it says, if you enter an area with a secret, you may assume that your party goes ahead and searches for that secret. You roll as you normally would to test if they discover it, unlock it, disarm any related traps, etc. But you only get one try. If you fail to discover a secret, it's lost to you, since unless your party would truly have some logical reason to believe the area is worth another search, such as a NPC telling them that there's a secret there, then you would have no other reason to keep going. When entering each other room, chamber, hallway, or other map section of the region you're exploring that is every location that does not contain a known secret, roll to determine if your party undertakes an astray. So this would be equivalent to if you have a multiplayer group and you're all sort of debating, do we search this room? Do we just move on? What are we going to do? And that whole debate that happens, and then the party decides they're going to search. So by rolling on this, that party discussion is kind of removed and you're replacing it with your roll result. So it's designed to offer balance between the extremes of automatically discovering everything without much effort and never being able to discover anything despite trying. So again, we've got these contexts here. So missed opportunity is one. Astray, roll again afterwards. Astray, progress afterwards, or proceed with knowledge. And then looking here at what that means. So missed opportunity. Not only does the party suffer an astray, but they lose any hope of taking advantage of the opportunity they were searching for. Any clue is lost. Any secret is obfuscated. And any treasure lies rotting under floorboards or debris. The party suffers an astray, see below, and loses any further chance of the immediate reward they sought in that room. So that would be the result of searching in a room that maybe doesn't have a secret. And then the astray here, it says the party endures an astray immediately. Once it is resolved, the party may roll again afterwards, meaning they may make a further roll on the intentional astray's flex table, or they may progress afterwards, meaning that once they suffer the astray, they at least automatically gain what they sought without having to check further. And then proceed with knowledge. Although this event appears as a result of rolling on the intentional strays table, it reverses the bad luck. They nearly suffered an astray, but it turns out they were indeed able to discover what they were looking for without further rolls or consequences. And so it says suffering an astray means two things. The party wastes time and the party suffers consequences. A good rule of thumb is that the party loses fivefold the amount of time it takes to normally search an area based on the rules system you are employing. This may in turn lead to additional consequences such as a wandering monster or encounter tables based on the adventure you are playing and the landscape of the region. So if you're tracking time, maybe that's making it closer to nighttime, so they lost daylight and they have to basically prepare to rest sooner than they would have otherwise. This lost time could also mean additional consequences in the context of a ticking clock, a party working against a deadline or hurrying to beat someone else to a location or to accomplish something on a timer would therefore be less likely to embark upon exploration that might lead to an astray. You can simply use this quick and dirty 5 times a search wasted shorthand, or you can randomize things even further. So this table gives you kind of the randomization. So you can have 20 times the room search plus automatic wandering encounter, 15 times room search time spent, plus you get additional consequences, 10 times, 5 times, 2 times, and no time wasted. And then the additional consequences, there's a particular table you can use, but it could be traps, obstacles, etc. So this is how you're going to make a published adventure a little bit more random and a little bit more of a ticking clock if you have, any kind of time. And so here's some of those additional consequences. Everything from an entrap encountered may avoid and or disarm, or a trap encountered is automatically sprung. Environmental damage is suffered, so 1d6 points of bludgeoning may avoid with a reflex, dexterity, or spell save depending on which game you're playing, because again, this is compatible with D&D, Pathfinder, OSR, all those, right? And you have all these options here for what you roll on. Is this a normal encounter or is this advanced difficulty, etc.? Everything in this table is obstacles. So you could have bad luck, like reroll on this table but suffer disadvantage, and other obstacles. So I like it. So much thought goes into this, right? And it does. It seems like it would randomize it a little bit more. And then I just wanted to show another cool table. So that was everything on intentional astrays. This is just one of many tables in the book that jumped out at me and I wanted to show you. So if you're dealing with an NPC and you're trying to figure out, well, what do I want to do with this NPC? Am I trying to convince them? Am I trying to threaten them? Am I trying to gather information, etc.? The authors are using color coding and logos here to say, okay, if you're trying to convince and whatever material you're using doesn't say what kind of skill, ability check, save you should use, then they're recommending, if you're playing Pathfinder, use diplomacy. If you're using Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, use Charisma Persuasion. If you're using OSR or Dungeon Crawl Classics, use Charisma. And so on for all of these different things. And again, they're trying to cover so many bases for you to really make it so that you're not just stuck figuring it out on your own. So obviously you have things you have to do if you're adventuring, right? And so what I also like about this particular book is that there's all these little templates for various adventures that you can have and quests. And so there's things like locating something, escorting someone, but one of the most common ones would be like a slay quest where you have to go slay a monster. So it says here, it's a stereotypical backbone of most fantasy role-playing games, kill a certain number of monsters. So this is a view of what the templates are like. So you've got the purpose variability. To introduce a bit of narrative interest into the proceedings of a slay quest, you can randomize the nature of the objective using the table below. So is the objective to assassinate, clear, or take some trophies, and you can re-roll. For example, assassinate would be hunt down and kill one particular sentient creature. Victims should be NPCs, of course. clear the area of monsters or get trophies, and it goes into more detail. And then all slay quests involve a similar structure and nature as follows. One or more creatures must be slain. There may be a location of interest, and there may simply be a creature of interest. And then the following quest prototypes are included for quests of this nature. You should feel free to create your own. If you're looking to randomize which template to use, roll on the following table. So here's the templates for this. So you've got one target, multiple targets, distant target, protected target, and then options to re-roll. And then here's some randomness. You have determination. If you were to randomly select whether a quest of this type uses a certain type of determination, use the table below. So early determination, late determination, and then roll targeting. For each role in the quest of this type, you can use the following table to randomly determine how the role will be filled. So pick or random or create. And randomized clue requirements. Most like quests do not involve clues. Those that do rely upon the gathering of clues to provide vital information about where to find the creatures that you must destroy. Roll on the table below to determine the clue requirement. So there's no clue requirement, one clue to resolve, 1d4, one clue with each milestone, etc. And then goes into detail what those are. So, and some of these I didn't give you detail on, but they do have it in the book. You can click on some of these things. In the course of pursuing a quest of this nature, you may encounter random events unique to it. For every 5 minutes of real life time spent actively pursuing a quest of this type, roll on the following table to determine what occurs. So no event, the monster or the target flees, there's reinforcements, the terrain becomes difficult, there's different reinforcements. So the creature you're pursuing or fighting already gets scared, thinks better of their chances, and suddenly remembers an urgent appointment or otherwise comes up with a reason to be elsewhere. They flee from the party as quickly as they're capable. And then you have reinforcements. The creatures you are fighting suddenly receive the support of friendly combatants. If you are fighting an NPC target, 1d4 guards arrive to bolster their forces. If you're fighting a monster, 1d6 of that same monster arrive. If each monster you're already fighting has more hit dice than you, then only 1d3 reinforcements arrive. So again, trying to think of everything. Then difficult terrain, different reinforcements, randomized rewards. So you get no reward, 1d2 rewards, etc. And then the categories are: do you get material, social, mechanical, magical, narrative, or exploration rewards? And then again, these are all available in the book. So you can go to that section and figure it out. So exploration looks like you can't get that one, but because it's blank here, but still shows you the various reward categories available in the book. And then if you fail, you may get a penalty. So 1 penalty or 2 or 3, and those are all linked in the book. There's big sections on penalties, all the different options, tons of sections on the rewards. And then here's the categories for the penalties and randomized urgency. So it says quests of this nature may have a variable sense of urgency. So you can make it almost too late, you're already behind, immediate, eventual, or ignorable, meaning it doesn't matter when you get to it. It's just kind of a nice to have thing. And then stakes, like is it life or death for the world, the universe around us, the region, or is it life or death for a particular person? Is it medium stakes, minor stakes, trivial? And the pace, is it breakneck, urgent, medium, passive, optional? So some of these things, if it's almost too late, then it's going to be automatically, in my mind, at a breakneck pace. So if you're playing solo, obviously you have to use your head. And, if you roll almost too late, then you just look at this table and go, well, the pace needs to be pretty much breakneck if we're racing against time. Or if it's life or death of the whole region, then yeah, it's going to probably be breakneck. So they are color coded to kind of go together, so that can also help you say, okay, I would pick the one that's got this color for that particular quest. And then there's chainability, so it leads from the completed, it leads from active, leads to a new one. How to chain these together, because again, you're taking the place of all of these roles. So this would be the DM. would be telling you what's next. But with this book, you can just keep the adventure going. So it's even got these flow charts for the template. So you've got the beginning, you slay the target, is there a victim, is there a reward, etc. And some of the flow charts are very complex. I picked a simple one for the example, but there's some that are pretty complex, which is nice. So here's plot template, slay one target, and it's got all the things combined together, so you can kind of just view it all again and just quickly roll on it if you don't need all the intro text, etc. So that's the first book. Now we're going to take a look at the second book. And as I said, this first book has pretty much everything you could need in it to create quests, to randomize things, to mix it up, and to tweak your character, to penalize your character, to reward your character as you're solo role-playing, which is really cool and fun. There are people that really just don't get to play Dungeons & Dragons, Pathfinder, OSR, any of these things as much as they want. And so I think books like this are a really good opportunity for people to get to continue to play, maybe even practice, get better, or maybe that you're a player and you want to be a DM. This could kind of help you think about it from a story perspective, an adventure perspective, and how the things have to flow. And maybe by playing a few solo things like this and going through this experience, you kind of start to get this structure in your head of how things need to go, or ideas of stories you could create as a DM. So lots of opportunities, but let's now look at some of the monsters in the second book. Aquilae, Bestiary of the Realm, Solo Quick Start, is one of several books from Infinium Game Studio that offer monsters that you can use in your solo gaming experience. So I would encourage you to check out some of the other ones as well to see which one you like the best, but we're going to deep dive into this one a little bit today. So here's the table of contents. It's got intro to the Flex AI system, FlexTale, all of that good stuff, some of which we've gone over already. And then you see the various monsters that are included in this one, which is a good, healthy selection. They've got a lot of the ones that you see a lot of: kobolds, zombies, skeletons, orcs, spiders, mummies, dragons, owlbears, etc. So one of the things that it does with this system is it comes up with these different ways of responding, so that you can have this sort of AI or artificial intelligence response from these monsters, since you're going to be maneuvering them as well, since you're playing by yourself, right? So the monster might do a main attack, a secondary attack, a maneuver, defend, or use an ability, or flee. And so it describes each of those. So for example, the main attack is the creature attacks using its standard attack. For most creatures, this will be melee. For others, it will be ranged. And then you've got things for like uses an item, such as a wand or potion, because again, this could be an NPC that you're controlling here. Fleeing, of course, is pretty self-explanatory. And the maneuver, it could be just moving around, maneuvering around the battlefield, etc. And then you've got some other types of descriptors for these creatures. Are they frontline, where they're in the front of the pack, always up there battling, or are in the rear guard, maybe bringing up the rear of the contingent? Are they the closest, nearest, farthest, strongest? I'm only showing some of them here because there are variations you can use and apply to the monsters to, again, randomize what you're dealing with. And then there's roles for the monsters. The ones that are profiled with the stat blocks in the book, they have the role assigned to them. But if you're creating a new monster for the purposes of an adventure, you could randomly pick from here. Maybe they're a brute, or they're a soldier, etc. So again, I'm not showing all of them. I don't want to give everything away. But for example, the brute inflicts high damage, typically via melee attacks, has a great deal of hit points, but possibly low defenses. Whereas the skirmisher may be an average in many categories, but excels in mobility and uses this to their tactical advantage in selecting targets where they can do the most damage. Similar to 4th edition stuff, some of these things. So if you're familiar with 4th edition. And then you've got some variations on roles. So everything from normal, minion, elite, and then some others that I'm not showing here. because I don't want to give it all away, but like minions are weaker than normal creatures and are rarely found in the absence of a ruling, more powerful presence. Typically, minions are encountered in groups. And then, of course, elite creatures are powerful, flexible, and formidable enemies. A single elite creature might rule over dozens of minions and several normal creatures in a complex combat encounter. So various ways of distinguishing between different creatures. Maybe there's a bunch of kobolds and there's an elite kobold, and then there's some that are normal and some that are minion, and it kind of scales with that. And then you have, what are they going to do? Are they going to be ambushing? Are they going to be unprepared? I'm not showing all the possibilities here, but let's look at one. Ambushing. This creature is ambushing its prey, lying in wait, hiding, or using stealth, invisibility, or aspects of the terrain to make their presence unknown until the moment to strike is nigh. The stance also applies to situations in which PCs are simply unaware of the creature and are surprised by it. A mimic that has not been detected is an ambushing stance, right? So all these stances, unprepared stance, fresh, other stances described in the book, to again add that flavor, make them different. You don't want every kobold or whatever you're going up against to be the same. So this is that brute roll that we talked about. You've got some other symbols that harken back to the other sections here. Just kind of a generic, what are they going to do? So you would, again, look at these columns to decide, is this just a standard encounter, or is this an advanced one, etc. And then you would roll your 1d100, and based on that, you would pick what happened. So let's say we rolled a 40, then the enemy is going to use an ability. So we would look at the stat block, find an ability, and just assume that happened and make the requisite rolls to resolve that. But as you go, you can see there's also things like surges, which are basically pluses to attack rolls depending on the system, because again, all of this is going to be broken down by Pathfinder, 5th edition, all the variations for you. And lulls, which is where they take minuses to some of their rolls. And so they have charts for everything, but charts for that as well. And you can see here what the various positions are and can be rolled. And then now we're going to look at one of the stat blocks. So that was just kind of picking what a brute would do if we go back. So if it's a brute in a fresh stance, these are the possibilities for what the actions would be. So you would need to take the stat block I'm about to show you and find the corresponding chart like this to roll its actions. So quadded stat block, so it says toward a goal of having an adventure that can be run by PCs at various levels, all NPCs and monsters in this have 4 separate sets of statistics. So you've got the low level statistics, which are the default and are intended for basically tier 1. So you've got this sort of white crossed swords here, and the moderate statistics are for 5th to 8th level. Those are in blue, and then advanced would be levels 10 to 15, and then elite with the dark sort of blood red would be 12 to 20 CR, or PCs above the 15th level. So now looking at an actual monster, and we're just going to look at one in this video. You've got the purple worm. You can see it is a brute, and it's got other characteristics here as well, but it tells you across the board that it's got the same terrain, rarity, roll, all of that stuff here. But you can see where you've got that sort of level 1 to 4 tier 1 stat block, and then you've got the elite stat block over here. So you can see how things change. Some things stay the same, like the armor class is the same, but the hit points are changing. The speed stays the same. Then you've got various other details that are mostly a little variations here and there. They might have better perception, etc. But a lot of similar statistics. Challenge rating changes, of course. Then their save DCs are changing, and then the qualities are basically traits that they have that they can use. So this is across the board. Anything that spreads across all the columns is across the board, regardless of whether you're dealing with a low or elite or anything in between. it has access to these qualities. And then here are the standard actions, and you can see as we go from low to elite that the amount of damage and to hit and all of that changes. So at low, the bite is a melee weapon attack with +5 to hit, but then when you get to elite, it's +8 to hit, right? And then the reach is greater, so 30 feet in elite versus 15 feet, and then you do 26 versus 59 piercing damage. So it's very nice how it's laid out like this, that you can see all the variations. If you're playing by yourself, this is a quick, easy way to say, okay, I'm in this column or I'm in this column, and then you just move forward. So I can see where this would be super helpful if you're playing by yourself. Even if you're not, I'm sure you could use these stat blocks in a multiplayer setting. And this might help the DM as well to have all of these different variations, because maybe you intended the module to be tier 1, but now they're in tier 2, so you use the moderate stat blocks, and you don't even have to like do the math or change it or give them extra abilities. You just switch to this in the stat block and you're good to go. So there's a lot more to see in both of these books, but I really just wanted to give you some of the highlights, go deep in some of the parts of it, and encourage you to take a look at what Infinium Game Studio is up to. They have a ton of titles with variations on what I showed you. I will link both of these particular books in the video description, as well as a link to Infinium's titles in general, so that if you want to just look at everything you can. If you do click on those links, I do get a small percentage to help the channel, so I really appreciate that if you could do that. And I wish you the best of luck in your solo adventures. I think these titles will really help you. If you've got a title you'd like us to consider for a video review on the channel, please see the video description for a link to our Google form where you can submit your title. We can't promise we're going to cover every single title we receive, but we do appreciate receiving them and having the opportunity to consider your work. If you'd like to support the channel, consider purchasing one of our books. We've got Van Richten's Librum of Lineages with truly unique lineages for any setting, as well as optional rules to help you deal with lineages in your campaign. We've also got Potions Unlocked, which is over 100 pages in both digital and print-on-demand format, with tons of new potions, including a short story for each one explaining its origin, as well as potion locations, plants, and more. There's even a magic school in there where you can learn to do potions, so it's perfect if you're using Strixhaven. We've also got the Feywild Companion, which is over 150 pages of Feywild fun for both DMs and players alike. Inside, you've got complete adventures, encounters, monsters, as well as a subclass for every single class, spells, magic items, even rules on how to alter monster size and keep them balanced. We also have Fizban's Vault of Draconic Secrets, including tons of dragon-themed player content, with a subclass for each class, draconic gifts, magic items, trinkets, a brand new familiar, and adventure hooks to tie everything together, for the DM to incorporate all the new stuff in the book, or for the player to use to create a backstory. We hope you've enjoyed this video. Please follow us on Twitter at Splinterverse, subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave us a comment, and stay tuned because we have much more D&D content headed your way. Until next time, happy adventuring.